Welcome to another episode of our podcast, Practical Product Management. Our premise here is that theory's great, but product management happens in the practical space, in context, in your company. And so it's really about what you do practically. Right, Marilyn?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. So today we are going to interview Ekaterina. And so we've talked a little bit in the past about how there are sort of so many jobs you can do when you're a product manager. And so I asked Ekaterina if she would come talk to us about being a more technical product manager. So Ekaterina, I'll turn it over to you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you, and then we'll dive into some questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, I'm Ekaterina. I'm super happy to be here. I love talking about product management. I also apply product management principles in my day-to-day life. So I'm, a fan. And I work with developer productivity and client infrastructure at Spotify. Before that, I worked with building a credit product from 0 to 1 in accounting space. And before that, I worked with partner integration and credit tricks. So a few different things. And in at least half of my roles as a product manager, my customers were other internal roles. And the space that I love the most is when there is a very complex system, and then we still have a great focus on the customer experience, and we make sure that the customer never feels how complex everything is underneath. So that's my background in a nutshell. And then I also teach my kid to use the word prioritize. So that's also work in progress.
Marilyn can give you tips on product managing your child. Hers is now raised, but the kid's been on a PIP. He's had a scrum board. Like, he's got a whole situation. So if you ever need tips on raising your kid as a product manager, Marilyn's your girl.
Oh, that's amazing, Marilyn. I'm starting to know the questions to come back to you with that.
Happy to help. Family stand-up is a game changer. That's what I'll say.
Oh my God. Okay, we're not that far.
Did you see the light go on in her eyes, Marilyn? Like, family stand-up. What have you done today? What did you do? What are you doing tomorrow?
Exactly right. How else are you going to know what's going on in your teenager's life? They don't talk.
We're going to overhaul this whole theme of this podcast.
Right, it's all over. We're just changing the whole thing to product managing your kids.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So, Ekaterina, I would love for you to talk us through a little bit, like, how did you get into product management, and how did you find yourself sort of in this space of really technical roles and finding that kind of love for that complexity space?
Yeah. I studied engineering in my first degree. And then, when I say that, people usually say, but that's why you can do the technical product management. But my degree in engineering was around telecommunications on the railway transport. So it doesn't directly relate to what I do day to day now. However, it gave me, I think, the system thinking that really helps with the platform product management, technical product management, and overall, whenever I work with other people and products. And then my first job was in customer care, and there I got lots of empathy to the customer. So it also, to be honest, gave me an opportunity to see what different people do in the company, because I don't think I was as mature to actually figure out my whole career journey ahead of me. So I sort of figured out that if you start with customer care, you will know who are what people do, how people grow. And after I have interacted with people who work with product, I thought it was super interesting. So that's how I got interested in product management. And I felt like that role would give me both touch points with the systems and architecture and technical aspect, but also it's a lot about problem solving. And that I liked as well. And having customer in the center. And that I liked as well. So I felt the recipe was there. And the customer care that I worked was for telecommunications, for cross-border networks. But the first role that I got was for mobile apps. which were on the rise at that time. So I got lots of empathy to the end customer, to, you know, people around me, and how they use mobile apps. So that's how I ended up with in product management. And then I had the mentor at the time when I worked with mobile apps, and she actually recommended me to try and work with different type of products. And this is how I ended up going to Klarna and working with the credit infrastructure and backend systems. So that's how I got more into platform product management, while still I think it was extremely beneficial to have experience of working in a customer-facing product, because then the whole chain of how everything interacts with each other made much more sense for me, even if I worked with the platforms.
Yeah.
I love that point of view. I think that what you just described really resonates with me and probably Leah. So I'm not a platform person. I don't know if you guys know this or not.
You're right.
Leah is.
Sure you're not.
But this notion of being able to sort of like understand how a platform works, and how that relates to the customer experience. I mean, that's how my brain thinks, right? You can describe, as a user, you can describe a problem, and my brain's already trying to figure out how everything across the layers will fit together in order to deliver that great customer experience. So I love your background. And I'm super excited we get to have this conversation with you.
Likewise.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, one of the things for me that I along the way have said to people is like, you need to be able to draw the big boxes of what the architecture of your products are, right? And if you can't, then you don't know enough about your product, right? And so I've had front end product managers be like, well, I don't know about the architecture and the infrastructure. And I'm like, guess you better go find out.
Yeah.
Right. And so because similar to Marilyn, I want people when I'm leading product managers, I want them to think that way. I want them to be able to put their product in context of the big picture of what it is we're delivering. Right. And if you're in the platform or in the back end or in the technical side, more than ever, you need to be able to understand where you are in context of the entire thing so that you know what your piece does for that end customer. Right.
Yeah.
For me, that's always been really, really critical.
Yeah.
What do you think what do you think is unique? I mean, we talked a little bit about it just now, but what do you think is unique about the role you play versus maybe what people traditionally think of as product management, more sort of front end product management, where Marilyn likes to hang out?
That's right.
I think main differentiator is the horizon, how much time things take. And I often talk to product managers in my team about this sense of delayed gratification, that you need to be able to work in the environment of delayed gratification, because as someone working with a customer facing product, you can run a quick A/B test, or maybe you can go and test with your customers and then get feedback and fine tune it. Due to the fact that it takes time to make majority of the changes that we are driving on the platform side, due to the fact that it's complex, it takes time. So as a product manager, you do discovery, it goes into implementation, you help with prioritization, but you already start working on next discovery or on some other things. When finally what you have been working on gets delivered, you get feedback from the customers that are happy or not happy, but you are constantly sort of off sync from this feedback loop. And then you constantly need to switch and go back then to the feedback that you got for the previous thing that you have been working. So I constantly think about this. When is the feedback loop coming in? When is this gratification of customer feedback or return on investment comes in? And that's, I think, the biggest differentiator from working with the customer-facing products. And I think another aspect of that is also that when I work with platform products, it's a lot about empowering other teams. And it's exactly almost quoting what you said, Leah, that, you know, what we do to empower them, I need to understand how they contribute to and solve customer problems. What are the problems of their customers? Right. So I constantly have two groups of customers in mind, as well as overall business aspect for the whole company, but then also business aspect, how do we deliver impact on our side, and how does our business impact contribute to the company. So it's also this two layers that I constantly need to keep in mind. And I think that's the second differentiator compared to some teams that are working directly with the end customers and can directly get this, oh, we sold one more product and this is how it
Right.
contributes to the business.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know for me, one of the big things that, I mean, I've gone and talked to Marilyn's teams at some of her Interpass jobs to say, like, you are product managers no matter what anybody says. Right? Because
100%.
sometimes when you don't have that end customer touch point, people are like, is it really product management if you don't have it? And I'm like, yeah, because I'm not only worried about my customer, who might be you, other product manager, I'm worried about your customer.
Yeah.
So it actually, this has this really weird macro micro thing going on in your brain, because you're always like, how do I build my thing so that it can be multi-tenant? And how do I make sure that whatever I'm building that is multi-tenant to these, my internal customers or my user base, actually solves the problem of their customers, that's another layer out. And so I think it takes a special brain sometimes to be able to be like, how can I layer in this context, right?
Yeah.
And so, I find it just infuriatingly just disrespectful to be like, you're not really a product manager. Right. So, I mean, I think Marilyn knows that when I talk about that, sometimes people in the room are like, oh, good. Someone said I really am a product manager. So,
Oh my God. Yeah. And this is the challenge, I think, generally challenge of product management, that when we were scaling a lot in technology, there were lots of product managers, and then maybe there was less attention to the core of the craft. And I think coming back to the platform ecosystem, many of them became more project managers or more, doing lots of busy tasks. But if we look to the platforms, it's so expensive if we are wrong in platform ecosystem or in technical ecosystem, that because then we don't set up our customers for success, which means they have a harder time delivering as efficiently value to the business and to the end customer.
yeah.
So I think the product craft is extremely important when we talk about platform context, because depending what problems you are going to choose, how good you are at executing on them and delivering impact, you actually can really make such a difference in the business. And also managing opinionated stakeholders. I find that my stakeholders are much more opinionated than when I worked, for example, with mobile apps, because then I could show data and then it was easier to resolve that kind of argument. Yeah. So I think in platform, it's extremely important to have a really good product management craft, but it is hard. It's not something that from one day to another, that easy to get established and run in the organization.
Yeah.
You said two things that I absolutely love. The first is the way you just described technical product management said nothing about being an engineer. And it's all about the product craft. And then you're 100% right about the expense and latency, the learning cycle. And I do think it's very easy when you get to what I will call the innovative edge, where the user sort of touches the software. It's very easy to innovate there. It's very easy to test and be wrong. It's very easy to course correct. You need to be right in the platforms. You need to be right. And so I actually think, and I like, full respect to Leah, who's taught me to be a better platform person. I think you must be right. Your tolerance for being wrong, especially in big ways in the platform, is very expensive. And that's actually where you need a lot of your product management skill to make sure that you're learning as much as you can before you deploy engineering resources to go do something. So I love those two perspectives. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because as you're talking, I'm thinking, that a lot of times when I talk about platform product management, I talk about like, you draw the box, what's in the box. You
Mhm.
absolutely do not give up the ground on the box, whatever you said is the platform. Everything orchestration, everything innovative on the outside edge, you're free to do however you want, other customers, but this box is my box.
Yeah.
The trick in that box then is like really being crystal about the themes, like
Mm,
what problem am I solving for? What problems can I solve for? Where can I be flexible? Where do I need to add in adaptability? But where do we never give up ground
mm,
so that we're not wrong? Right. And I think, having, I think that edge, and saying like, this is what's in the platform.
mm,
Everything I may build some of the other stuff too. Like that's fine. If you need me to build it, my teams can build it, but
mm.
it's outside of the box. Right.
Yeah.
And it's really drawing those lines and being willing to say, yeah, this, you don't own that. So I'm going to need you to back away. Right. So,
Yeah. But
Katerina, you talked a little bit about
mhm.
stakeholder management and opinionated stakeholders. How, like, what Leah described as real, right? How do you
Oh,
manage that?
100%. Yeah. Just when you were describing this box, I could think about few discussions with stakeholders where it's it's challenging because supporting the business would mean changing the boundaries of the box,
yeah.
but also supporting long-term business might mean to stand the ground and keep those boundaries of the box. And this comes back to understanding the business as well, I think. And then it's a long intro to the answer to your question, Marilyn, about stakeholders. In that sense, there are many teams, and whenever working with platform could solve so many use cases, but really understanding what's valuable to the business. And then for that, one needs to actually understand the whole business. So I really encourage also the product managers in my team really understand how the whole business case goes together, what is the business model, what are the teams working on. But another part of opinionated stakeholders is, of course, the senior engineering members and architects and people who are really passionate about technology, because this box wouldn't work without that,
Right.
right? So being able to bring in the right aspects, understand the impact, and help articulate the impact, sometimes to their frustration, because of course it's very fun to write complex code, but also working with them and supporting them, right? And also for them to support me and my team in the work, that helps to define how the box looks like.
Yeah.
And then being able to really empathize with the challenges of other teams, of business teams. So those are stakeholders. But then there are also adjacent teams who also sometimes other platform teams, sometimes they are supporting platform team, and trying to move from, well, this is my line, this is your line, like how can we handle this all together. And I think that's why the metaphor with the box that you provided, Leah, it's really powerful, because it's both helps, but also it might lead to a really wrong way. So that's why it's
Yeah.
also very important to understand how the whole ecosystem works, how the whole business works, so that one could decide in the right moments to stand the ground
Yeah.
and say no, and in other cases actually say yes,
Yeah.
let's figure it out.
Yeah.
But it all comes back to really building empathy towards the stakeholders, different competences of stakeholders. It all comes back to building trust with them, and trying to raise awareness of how the inner workings of that box works, what is the value that we can deliver. And I think in the foundation, it goes back to communication, because
Yeah.
if we cannot explain that in the language that they understand, it's very easy in platform just to do very complex language and very complex explanation.
And hope they don't understand and question you.
Kind of. I don't use that trick.
I'm going to make this sound really hard.
Exactly. But then that doesn't help either, right?
No.
So being able for them to get a mental model of how things work and how we can solve problems together,
Yeah,
that's always something that delivers value.
Yeah.
But it's not like it's not easy. It's challenging, of course.
Yeah.
It actually. So you guys have talked on this this notion of complexification. Wow. And simplicity. I do find that you're right. People like we want to build really complex things, but ultimately, sometimes simple is hard. And I think as platform people, and I'm looking at both of you, how do you balance between complexity and then actually building something simple? Because simple scales, right? Complexity does not. So how do you balance that? Because you are the definition, right? You are the people that are defining what's going to get built and why.
Yeah. You want to go first?
Yeah. I think when you were posing this question, I was like, I wish there was this formula that I could pull and say, that's the formula.
Magic wand.
Right.
Exactly. And then everyone can do that role. I think it's a lot about, unfortunately, the answer is long and complex, or at the same time simple, right? You need to figure it out, and otherwise it doesn't make sense to build the platform if it doesn't scale with the business, or it doesn't scale with the use case, we can say like that. So I think that really understanding how the business works, understanding needs of stakeholders, looking at the trends across the market, looking at other competitors. And there are also conferences per area that I think staying curious is the most important aspect. And then being open to challenge yourself, but stay patient. I come back again to what I said with the delayed gratification. Since it takes months and in some cases years, you also need to figure out what are your success metrics, proxy success metrics on the way, whether you are building something complex that doesn't scale, or is this complexity just MVP on the way to simplicity. But there is, there are advice here, advice there, advice here, but I don't have a scalable formula.
It's because it's not that easy. It's not that simple. Like what's funny is as you're talking, I'm thinking, and Marilyn this will resonate with you. As you asked the question and as Ekaterina answered, I was thinking that one of the places where I learned this was by running office hours at Amazon. Because in order to launch anything outside of AWS, in order to launch anything, you had to come through the payments platform. You couldn't launch without coming to me at some point and saying, I need to launch this thing. And I would sit in this room and people would say, I need to do Bitcoin in China. And I'd be like, okay, that is not a priority. Right. Or I need to do this and there. And I'd be like, and I always laugh because I always say that everybody who ever came to office hours was like, this is very important to Jeff Bezos. And I'm like, no, it's not. I'm like, I know. And so you have to play this game. Right. But what happened for me across time is I could sit in the room and be like, all right, I could, as they described what they needed from the platform, I could sit in the room and be like, yeah, okay, I've got about 40% of that. Okay, I've got about 80% of that. Okay, I actually am already building that for that person, and I could just tag this on, and that can stay in the box, but you're going to need to build this piece. And my brain could start putting the puzzle together, but that was because I understood the architecture of the box. And so when someone asked me for something, I could be like, well, that doesn't exist at all, right? That's not even a real thing you just described to me, right? And so, and so I think what happened across time was that I thought in terms of themes, right? I had broken the box down into I mean, this is where microservices come from, right? You break the big box down into bits and pieces and you go, this use case needs only 50% of what I build and I've got it all. Or it needs 50% of what I build and the other 50% is somewhere else, or I need to build it, right? And so you have all of this, like this little puzzle that has to come together.
Yeah.
And again, I think that's why platforms need product managers, right? Because in the absence of that, engineers, I love you engineers, don't take this wrong, build every time.
Yeah.
They tend to go out and build every time. And it's like, you don't need to build anything. I just want you to add this, right? And I don't do anything. So my job was to come up with the theme. And then the other thing that you said that really sticks with me is really having to help platform folks and technical folks and say, you need to come up with a measurement of what you are actually making possible. It is not about volume for you. It's typically, I mean, if you're running Amazon's payments platform, it is a volume game, but in general, it's not a volume game. And so what are you enabling? And so I would always say there's this enablement metric that you need to figure out how to calculate. What did I make happen this year? What did I enable this year? Rather than I launched something fancy and innovative. Like what happened because you did your part?
Yeah.
And I think figuring out how to measure that will make people who have to really spend their life down in that space light up, because they'll be like, I did a thing instead of I built a box. Right? Like, so because it can get you can get really in the weeds and be like, I just over here building boxes. Right.
Yeah.
But if I look at the box and go, I built a box and it enabled this and this and this and this and this and this, and then you have this real energy behind what it is you do.
Yeah.
It is product management. Right. So.
And I think the easiest description of that box that I've heard someone that's not in the box or doesn't build boxes talk about is Stripe. And I think we've talked about this before, Leah. Yeah. They made it easy for anyone to integrate payments. Simple. Yep. In minutes, not weeks, months, like whatever. And so I feel like platforms enable speed, they enable flexibility, they enable experimentation, they actually enable the edge to move faster because they're stable, secure, they have published APIs, you know how they're going to behave. Yeah. I think platforms are the key to speed.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, go ahead, Ekaterina.
Yeah, I was just thinking, because we're so paying so many compliments to the platforms, I think at the same time, one needs to be, again, we come back to the craft of product management.
Yeah.
It's expensive for it to scale and enable business in such a fundamental way. It needs to be built in such a way that it scales, but also that it evolves. You never, with any product, you cannot build the product at year 1 in such a way that it actually empowers you at year 10.
Right.
That's not possible. You also need to work it along the way.
Yeah.
So I think also having that mindset of what's the right scale now, and then potentially changing it, and having that humble approach that I did my best 2 years ago. That was the right decision. But now we're in new circumstances. Now we need to rebuild it. So I was also thinking about that I think platforms are extremely powerful, but also as any kind of power, you need to take it with care. And if it's okay if the business decides not to build platforms and decides to build individual logics or buy things, because that otherwise one might invest a lot of money into something and then it will be a waste of time and effort.
Yeah. No, and I think I 100% agree. And I think Marilyn and I've talked about this before as well. Like, not everything is a platform.
No.
And not everything needs a platform.
No.
Right. And so, and I am a big believer in don't build stuff that someone else already spent $10 billion to build. Right. Like, I mean, we all know I was basically, berated for not building a Salesforce replacement. And I was like, why would I do that? Right. It's a bad idea, until it gets easier, which now it is getting easier with AI. There's ways you can do that and that makes sense. But then it didn't make sense for me to rebuild that.
Yeah.
It existed. And it took them years to get as good as it was.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think I 100% agree with you. Like, they are expensive. They are high risk. If you do it wrong, then it takes a long time. It can take a while to get in there and fix it. Not everything, because if you build it well, you can make adaptations quickly. But there are real consequences. And so everything is not a platform.
No.
And I think sometimes we throw the word platform around when what we mean is a group of services that all talk to each other. It's like, congrats, you don't have a platform, right?
Ouch.
So,
no.
But yeah, 100%.
But then coming back to where we started this discussion, how do you two differentiate technical product manager? How do you define technical product manager versus platform product manager?
It's a good question.
Ooh.
Marilyn?
Listen, I think part of this conversation is that we keep coming back to the same place philosophically. Product management is product management is product management. Personally, when I'm talking to the organization or a set of people that are less familiar, I'll say my technical product managers, their interfaces are APIs, not UI. Because it's just sort of like an easy sort of like snap to make.
Yeah.
But I think the obligation, I don't want to diminish what it means to own services or platforms, because again, when you talk about the speed and adaptability and the cost of being wrong, like, it's easier to bring on a junior product manager and teach them on the UI. It's really freaking expensive and hard to bring in a junior product manager and teach them about platforms. So I think there's from my easy definition perspective, it's what's your interface, what's your time horizon. Ekaterina used to use sort of articulated that very, very well. And what's the cost of being wrong, and the speed of delivery.
Yeah, for sure.
How about you, Leah? How would you define it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't disagree with anything either of you have said, and certainly not how you just described it. I think when you move into platform product management, there is sometimes a need for technical product management when the product itself, even if it has an interface, is more directed at other software developers or at other businesses who are needed. So often in B2B product management, you'll find more technical people. Like, not only, I'm not saying only, but sometimes you have a need for a more technical product manager who understands the infrastructure, the technical pieces, how it all comes together when there's not a platform. And sometimes you need a platform person who isn't an engineer, right? I'm not an engineer, right? But I think in puzzles, and I think in structures, and I think in processes, and so I didn't have to be an engineer to be a great platform PM, right? And so, like, for instance, you might need a more technical product manager to run really heavy data platforms or really heavy AI and machine learning. If that is what you need, and that technical person has that technical background, that's not me, right? But if you want to build a platform, that could be me, right? You know what I'm saying? So I think that there are some differentiations that happen here. And sometimes it's for, like, you can pop people in and out, but like anything, it's really about, like you said, Ekaterina, curiosity, willingness to learn. How do you think? How does your mind process the complexity of this information? And what does the product need practically? So we're back to why we talk about these things.
Yeah.
Right? It's the same thing I've always said. Like, if I'm running a payments platform, I don't need somebody with deep payments knowledge all the time. I need somebody who I can pop in and who can understand the puzzle and get in there and get it done.
Yeah.
I don't need industry expertise in that space, right? But I might, if I was building FDA approved medical devices, I might want somebody with that kind of technical product knowledge.
Yeah.
Right. So I think there's some lines here that I think get muddy, and that we use words in multiple ways. So,
yeah. And I think there's also the example that you made with very specific industry knowledge. Yeah. I also reflect that whatever area I worked with, whether financial services or developer products or, consumer facing apps, being able to build that and build that empathy towards the customer. I don't think it needs to come from the start, but
Right.
it's almost becomes a prerequisite for the product manager to be successful, to be able to build that on the system understanding of how it works.
Yeah.
And with the example of accounting, then maybe sit side by side with accountants or CFOs to understand what is the workflow. The same for developer experience, trying to write some code. It doesn't need to be the new top technological startup, right? But at least understanding. And I also have done that now in my role and the previous roles, just trying really to see how day-to-day of the users and customers look like. And I think that it connects to curiosity, but I also wanted to highlight this importance of empathy and building the empathy and really putting the effort into being able to operate in this industry. Even it doesn't need to be a very specific technical knowledge, but it needs to be this workflow, customer need, jobs to be done understanding.
Yeah. Well, and I think what you just did was just, if we went back to the podcast where Marilyn and I talked about what we think product managers, the skills you need to be a good product manager, everything you rattled off is on the list.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not like, oh, there's this one magic skill you must have. Nope. you can learn it. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's terrible. I think that there's, technical product management tends to strike terror in the hearts of some people, and it's not terrifying. I would even say every product manager is obligated to understand their technology. Obligated.
Yeah, 100%.
If you don't, you're not going to be a great product manager. And you're also, regardless of where you sit in the stack, obligated to go sit with your users and almost do like clean canvas exercise. Like the skills are the same.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. All right, Ekaterina, I'm going to throw you a curveball. I want to know, this is not tied necessarily to technical product management, but maybe it is. Tell me what you're excited about when it comes to product management right now.
I'm excited about the challenge. I think there is so much around another wave of hype with Gen AI and figuring out, because I think in that huge wave of hype, there is also a very strong stream of transformation of how we work.
Yeah.
And this is where, as with any hype wave, it's very easy to jump there and, start building something that doesn't help the customers or doesn't deliver business value.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's also changing what knowledge do we need to have, what understanding we need to have, changing how we learn. So then at the same time, there is an aspect of, can we actually do something not delivering value, but on the long term that would build the foundational knowledge so that we could actually leverage it in a few years.
Yeah.
And these are challenging trade-offs. So this kind of challenge really excites me and makes me really curious how others do that, trying to figure out with stakeholders internally, trying to figure out, how other leaders are thinking about it. And I think it's at the same time not only to ride the wave, but also seeing, can we steer some of the wave? So absolutely, this makes me very excited and very motivated waking up in the morning. But I'm very excited about challenges that we can solve these days. So it's not only the hype wave, if we park that one, but overall the technology is reaching such a maturity that the use cases, how we can help my customers internally, as well as other people around the world. I think that's really powerful. So I'm very curious about that, and that makes me very, very interested. How can I bring in my knowledge and skills into that?
Yeah. No, I love what you just said, because I think that when something new comes along, and I'm old enough to have seen several waves.
Mm-hmm.
Marilyn's not; she's really young.
Oh, whatever.
but I love what you said, because I think that there is jumping in and being like, we're gonna dive with both feet into this thing, and we're gonna totally do something new, and there's burying your head in the sand.
Yeah.
And often what we need to do as product managers is find the middle.
Mm.
Like, how do I know enough to help us move forward, but I'm not afraid of it, but also not necessarily diving into something that's totally not relevant yet for us, right?
Yeah.
Because all of our products, we didn't wake up on Tuesday and say, okay, now everybody stop what you're doing and go do this. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Right. So I don't know. That's just my thought. I don't, Marilyn, did you want to add anything?
No. I'm 100% aligned. I think, and it comes back to, where are you investing company time, money, and resources, and what's the return on that investment? You can't hide your head in the sand.
Yeah.
And if you think back to, like, when before phones became ubiquitous, for those of you that are young, there was a time when we all didn't have phones in our pockets all the time. Now everything is an app. Everything's very easy. I can turn to this little device and I can do pretty much anything I need to do. I believe some of the advancements in technology now will lead to a paradigm shift like that. We don't exactly know what it's going to look like quite yet, but you're irresponsible if you're not exploring some of that.
Right.
And so that balance is really, really important, and understanding what and where you're investing your time and talent, and directionally where you think it may or may not pay off for your company and your customers.
Yeah.
But I don't, don't bury your head in the sand. I am really looking forward to the DJ on Spotify getting a lot more accurate with my recommendations, Ekaterina, because when I leave him alone for too long, he gets a little crazy. But no, I'm just teasing you.
Also, we would like to have our podcast bump to the top of all the podcasts while you're at it.
How did you
if
tell
you're in
it?
charge of that or not, but
How did you tell you run your office hours, Leah? Your everything you said was duly noted.
Meryl and I each call in our favors at the end of the podcast. So it's like, anyone who's coming on this podcast, just know we may ask you for something. I don't
That was the fine print, right?
Yeah, you missed the tiny little print in white on the email and PS.
Leah, you know how we say, like, one of the most important jobs of a product manager is saying no?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Katerina's telling us no right now.
I feel like I taught her too well.
Right?
Nah, that's not true. She already knew how to say no before I found her.
But actually, talking about teaching and leadership, I think I wanted to connect with something when we talked just before, and about curiosity and what I'm excited about. I think also as a leader, I'm very excited how to have this culture of learning, both for myself but also for teams that I work with, because there are a bunch of ceremonies that everyone invented along the way. But I think actually now is the time when people really need to be able to pause all the operational chaos, pause all this fear of missing out, and like step by step learn. Yeah. So when you said something that you taught me, Leah, but I think I also was reflecting that as a leader, this like teaching of curiosity and giving space for the team to learn, that I'm both curious about that, excited about that, but also in full transparency, also slightly scared how to set up the teams for success, to be able to both learn but not be overwhelmed with that. So I think it's more the call outs to other product leaders and other leaders overall across the board. How can we make sure that there is good learning structures and processes in day-to-day operations when everyone is working 100+% in some cases and very busy operationally?
Yeah. I mean, I just read a statistic the other day that said something like, I don't remember the number, so I'm not going to try to quote it, but well over half of employees are saying they would not leave even when the market shifts if they feel their company is investing in their growth and learning. So, I mean, we all know that the market is hard right now. And so people are sitting still, right? A lot of people are sitting still and sort of waiting.
Yeah.
And we know that if because it will, when the market picks back up, that there will be an exodus and one of these games of shuffle, right? Like these people leave, these people come in, these people go here, that game will happen again. But if you don't want that to happen, you need to be now investing in the learning and growth of the people that you lead, right? Because that is what will make them say, I'm not going anywhere. I don't care if the market's good. So
I think the precursor to that, and Leah, you're going to kick me off my soapbox one of these days, because I think everything comes back to this. I think as leaders, the other thing you really need to consider when you're talking about learning and growth of your people is, how do you not lead with a culture of fear? And when people are delivering at 110% and we are working very, very hard, it's really easy for leaders to get punitive. You didn't deliver, like you failed at this. That culture is pervasive, and it will stifle and kill innovation.
yeah.
If your people fear punitive action, if they didn't hit a number or they didn't hit a goal, and you're not treating everything as growth towards something, you will kill your company, you will kill your stock. Ultimately, it just won't work, because technology is all about exploration and learning. And that needs to be cared for and fostered. Anyways, that's my little pipe jam.
No, I think it's super important. I mean, you can't say we're all about failing fast if you're not also about failing.
Yes.
So you can't have it both ways. You can't be like, let's get in there and try some things and fail fast if you're not also okay when the failing part of failing fast happens.
No.
Yeah.
And I think many people, when growing also as leaders, they're like, yeah, of course, I'm fine with that. But I think that you can really see that on the examples. And I think being able also to be there and be there and support there as a leader. And that's both give feedback, but also say, look, this is the real growth. This is not the theoretical growth that you read all over the articles and books, but this is the real growth that you will remember and you will learn from and be a better leader tomorrow.
Absolutely.
And also say the same to yourself. So also not to have the culture of fear towards yourself, because that all starts with us, and us being able to accept that we make mistakes, and we get at times we get tough feedback. How can we learn from that?
And we should share. So mistakes, it's not really a mistake, right? We tried something and it didn't work. So did you cover it up? Or did you showcase to the whole org, hey, listen, like, we tried this thing, not the right way to do it. We're going to try a different way. Did we talk about it? Did we showcase it? Are we offering it up not as a, like, hey, that Frank over there really screwed up and did this thing like Frank? Or are we saying, like, Frank was brave. He looked at all of the data. He made a choice, didn't pay off. He's going to make another choice. And so at quarter end or at year end or at review time, we don't punish Frank for failing. We would reward him for making a risk-based decision and then trying something else. So I think it's very structural. Fear is very structural. And so when you talk about things like, Gen AI, a lot of the sort of new technology that's evolving, if you're not celebrating learning along that journey, because to be clear, no one's figured it out yet. So if you're not celebrating what the team is learning over time and helping people understand what it means to make the qualitative decision or the quantitative decision, and then allowing others to learn and build off of that and celebrating the journey, you will not win. You will not win.
No.
Yeah. 100%.
Anyways.
I love it. Good talk. And Ekaterina, anything else you want to share?
I think I just want to encourage people to be curious.
Yeah.
And also and I think curiosity actually is one of the ways how we can conquer fear, because if we address what happened with the curiosity, or we see that it's a learning journey, I think that's the most important. And actually we celebrate the learning, and we, of course, as leaders, we still need to deliver business value, but then how on the truth, it will be such a better route if it is curiosity driven and learning driven. Absolutely. And I think that only creates a positive spiral up.
Love it.
But otherwise, no, this was such a great conversation.
Yeah, this was so much fun. Thank you for coming and talking to us about this, and sharing your learnings and your curiosity with us.
Thank you for having me. This was really fun.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Awesome. All right. Well, then we will see everyone at the next podcast. Thanks, Ekaterina.
Thank you.